The harvest moon hung like a golden medallion over the vast estate of Lord Vytautas, its light bathing fields so bountiful they seemed to bend under their own abundance. Servants scurried between granaries while the Lord himself stood on his manor balcony, a goblet of mead in one hand, surveying all he had built. "Another exceptional harvest," he proclaimed, his voice carrying the confidence of a man who believed fortune was merely the natural result of his own brilliance. "We shall feast for days." Below, at the edge of his property, villagers gathered around a small wooden altar. The old priest, grey-bearded and stooped, raised his arms towards the darkening eastern sky. "Great Perkūnas, Thunder Lord of the heavens, we honour you with this offering. Protect our harvest and grant us your favour through the coming winter." Lord Vytautas scoffed, loud enough for his attendants to hear. "Superstitious nonsense," he declared, draining his goblet. "My barns overflow not through divine favour, but through my hands, my planning, my superior methods." The priest turned, his weathered face serene despite the Lord's mockery. "My lord, the old ways have protected these lands for generations. The offerings to Perkūnas have taken food from your tables and coin from your purses," Vytautas interrupted with a dismissive wave. "While I have created wealth through intelligence and determination. Tell me, old man, where was your thunder god when I transformed barren soil into the most productive estate in the region?" The villagers shifted uncomfortably, eyes downcast. Only the priest maintained his dignity. "The gods give silently before they take loudly, my lord." Vytautas laughed, the sound echoing across the courtyard. "Then let them speak. I welcome their challenge. My wealth comes from my hands alone, and no invisible deity shall claim credit for what I have built." The following dawn brought strangeness to the estate. Servants awoke to find the dovecote empty. Every bird fled in the night. The horses whinnied in their stables, refusing to be calmed, kicking at their stalls with wild eyes. "What ails them?" Vytautas demanded of his stablemaster. "I know not, my lord. They sense something unnatural." By midday the peculiarities multiplied. The sky above the estate took on a greenish hue, though no clouds were present. Milk soured in the pantry despite the cool autumn air. A fox was spotted walking in circles at the edge of the wheat field, as if trapped by an invisible barrier. Eagle, the village wise woman, approached the manor with hesitant steps. Her arrival was unusual enough that Vytautas deigned to meet her in the courtyard rather than sending her away. "Speak your piece," he commanded, arms crossed. "My lord, these are omens. The barriers between our world and the divine realm grow thin. Perkūnas has noticed your challenge." "And you've noticed an opportunity to prey on superstition," Vytautas countered. "What would you have me do? Sacrifice my hard-earned grain? Pour out my finest mead?" Eagle remained steady. "A humble offering would suffice. Acknowledgement of forces beyond mortal control." "The only forces I acknowledge are those I can see with my eyes and touch with my hands," Vytautas replied, his voice hardening. "Your warnings are as substantial as morning mist, old woman, and just as quick to vanish in the light of reason." As Eagle departed, the Lord's most trusted adviser leaned close. "Perhaps a small gesture would not hurt, my lord, for the comfort of the servants, if nothing else." "Nonsense!" Vytautas snapped. "I'll not bow to ignorance and fear. This estate prospers through rational management, not mystical appeasement." The third day dawned clear and bright, but by mid-morning darkness gathered above the estate, and only the estate. Travellers on the main road marvelled at the peculiar sight. sunshine everywhere except for the perfect circle of shadow encompassing Lord Vytautas's lands. From the strange isolated cloud came a gentle rain, falling exclusively on the Lord's property. Servants exchanged worried glances, but Vytautas remained unmoved. "A meteorological curiosity," he declared, "nothing more." When the rain intensified, he ordered work to continue. When lightning flashed within the clouds, striking dangerously close to his fields, he attributed it to coincidence. Even when hail began to fall, strangely shaped like tiny axes, he refused to acknowledge anything beyond natural phenomena. "My lord," his steward pleaded, "this is no ordinary storm." "It is wind and water," Vytautas countered, though doubt had begun to creep into his voice. "Elements that follow natural laws, not the whims of imaginary beings." The hail ceased as abruptly as it had begun. For one breathless moment, silence descended over the estate. Then, from the heart of the cloud came a voice like grinding stones, heard not with ears but felt in bones. "Pride precedes destruction, Vytautas." Servants fell to their knees in terror, but the Lord remained standing, his face pale yet defiant. "Clever tricks," he called out, though his voice wavered. "Perhaps ventriloquism from the village priest, or some natural echo from the mountains." The cloud dissipated, leaving clear blue sky as if nothing had happened. Vytautas turned to his trembling household with forced confidence. "See, your thunder god retreats. Now return to your duties. We have a harvest to complete." That night, as darkness fell, an unnatural stillness descended. No cricket chirped, no nightbird called. The air hung heavy with anticipation, like a breath held too long. Vytautas retired to his chambers, dismissing the day's strange events. He had just begun to drift towards sleep when the first thunderclap shook the manor to its foundations. Outside, the sky erupted in chaos. Lightning tore across the heavens in patterns too deliberate to be random, symbols and runes of ancient power. Thunder followed not in natural rhythm, but in patterns that seemed almost like speech. Wind howled through the estate with surgical precision, lifting tiles from the roof while leaving nearby trees untouched. Rain fell in torrents, yet somehow avoided the village dwellings while concentrating its fury on Vytautas's fields and buildings. The Lord rushed to his window in nightclothes, watching in horror as lightning struck his treasury with unerring accuracy. Fire bloomed despite the downpour, consuming his wealth in moments. Servants fled the manor as walls began to crumble. The granaries, overfilled with the season's bounty, collapsed one by one. The carefully maintained irrigation channels overflowed, turning meticulously ploughed fields into swampland. In the courtyard, a massive oak, said to be sacred to Perkūnas in the old tales, remained untouched while modern structures fell around it. "This cannot be happening," Vytautas whispered, watching years of work destroyed in minutes. Above the chaos, the clouds parted briefly to reveal a face of impossible proportion, bearded and severe, eyes flashing with lightning, a crown of oak leaves adorning a brow furrowed in judgment. "You mistook privilege for power," boomed the voice of Perkūnas. "Your hands planted, but my reins nourished. Your plans directed, but my seasons enabled. Learn humility, mortal, or perish in your blindness." By dawn, nothing remained of Vytautas's prosperity. His fields lay ruined, his wealth scattered or burned, his grand manor reduced to scattered stones. The Lord himself, found huddled beneath the sacred oak, was alive but broken, his fine clothes soaked and torn, his hands that had built everything now empty. "You may stay with us," said Tomas, a farmer whom Vytautas had once fined heavily for a minor boundary dispute. We have little, but we share what we have. The irony was not lost on the former lord as he accepted shelter in the farmer's modest cottage. A single room housed Tomas, his wife, and 3 children, now joined by the man who had once lounged in 12 bedchambers. "Why help me?" Vytautas asked that first night, hunched by the small hearth. "Because that is our way," Tomas answered simply. "Community survives when individuals falter." Days passed in humbling succession. Vytautas, unused to physical labour, struggled to assist with even basic tasks. His soft hands blistered, then calloused. His back, never before bent in toil, ached constantly, yet slowly something changed within him. He witnessed the quiet dignity with which the villagers faced hardship. He saw how they supported one another without expectation of reward. He experienced the community rituals, not as empty superstitions but as bonds that united people through shared reverence. One evening, as Tomas's family prepared their meagre meal, the farmer's youngest daughter set aside a small portion of bread. "What is she doing?" Vytautas asked. "The offering," Tomas explained. "Even in hardship we acknowledge that we are not self-sufficient. We thank Žemaitė for the soil, Perkūnas for the rain, our ancestors for their wisdom." "Even after what happened to me? You don't fear divine punishment?" Tomas smiled gently. "The gods don't punish, my lord. They teach. And some students require stronger lessons." That night, Vytautas dreamed of his father, a man who had built their family's initial fortune through backbreaking work in the fields. In the dream, his father looked at him, not with pride, but with disappointment. "You forgot," the apparition said simply. "You forgot where you came from." When spring arrived, Vytautas approached the village council. Gone was his commanding presence. In its place, a humble demeanour and thoughtful expression. "I wish to help rebuild," he stated simply. "Not just my estate, but our community." Initial skepticism gradually gave way as Vytautas worked alongside those he had once commanded. His knowledge of crop rotation and resource management, now offered as suggestion rather than decree, proved valuable. His literacy allowed him to help negotiate favourable terms with neighbouring estates. Most significantly, he proposed a new structure for the rebuilt farms, smaller individual plots with shared equipment and communal granaries to ensure no family would face winter without food. "The lightning struck my treasury first," he explained when asked about this change. "Perhaps Perkūnas was showing me where my error began, in hoarding rather than circulating prosperity." The sacred oak, still standing amid the ruins of his manor, became the site for planning meetings rather than a new grand house. When children played beneath its branches, Vytautas no longer shooed them away but joined their games, telling stories his grandmother had once shared, tales of Perkūnas and Žemaitė he had long dismissed. When summer storms threatened, he was first to suggest offerings. When drought came, he led water conservation efforts while participating in the ancient rain-calling rituals. Both practical action and spiritual respect, no longer seeing them as contradictory paths. "You've changed," Egil observed one evening, finding him repairing a village fence. "I had no choice," he replied. "Everything I believed proved hollow." "Not everything," she corrected. "Your skills remain, your intelligence, your determination, but now they serve something greater than pride." Autumn returned, and with it a modest harvest, not the overwhelming abundance of previous years, but sufficient for all. The rebuilt community gathered at the sacred oak for the traditional blessing ceremony. To everyone's surprise, Vytautas stepped forward. "May I lead the offering?" he asked the priest, who nodded with knowing eyes. Vytautas raised his calloused hands to the sky, his voice clear and sincere. Great Perkūnas, Lord of thunder and justice, we stand before you not as masters, but as grateful stewards. This harvest comes through our hands, but by your power. These fields flourish through our labour, but with your blessing. We offer not from our excess, but from our essence, acknowledging that all we have is part of your greater creation. He placed bread, honey, and the first fruits of the harvest upon the altar. As he completed the ritual, a distant rumble of thunder rolled across the clear sky, gentle, approving. That evening, as villagers celebrated with dance and song, Vytautas sat quietly with Thomas's family. The farmer's youngest daughter climbed into his lap without hesitation. "Are you still a lord?" she asked innocently. Vytautas smiled. "I am something better now. I am a member of this community." Above them, stars shone in the clear night sky, and in the distance gentle thunder rumbled, a reminder that divine power remained, not as threat but as presence, acknowledging mortal growth with cosmic approval. For Vytautas had finally learned what true prosperity meant, not wealth accumulated but wisdom shared, not power over others but strength with them, not independence from divine forces but harmony within the greater pattern of existence. And in that understanding he found peace.